I don't think that something coming from nothing is logically impossible. I see no contradiction there.
It is really surprising to me how often atheists argue that it is not impossible for something to come from nothing. When I saw the title of Ozzy's video, I was sure that it would be a correction of these confusions, but unfortunately he's presenting sophistry. The definition of nothing is, as Ozzy put it, the literal absence of everything. That means nothing is the negation of all possible properties. If we have X, for example, nothing would be the negation of X. So it's important to note why they have this idea. So we have the idea that something may be able to come from nothing seems to come from this idea where we have something, and this would be the case of something. We have a space with something existing. And over here, we have another possible world where there's nothing that exists. But then again, what is this? Typically, we call this space. By our rule over here, space, we have to negate space, because space is not nothing. So we have to negate space, and then we maybe have nothing. But let's think about some other things. What about time? Can nothing be in time? Again, we have to negate time. So time is not nothing. So we have to negate time, since time is something. What about a state? Could nothing be some kind of a state before time? Again, state is something, so no, it's nothing. What about something that obtains, as Ozzy puts it? Again, nope, no obtaining. His obtaining would be something. Something is something that has the property of having been obtained, would be something. So again, the entire premise from the beginning is flawed. It's a contradiction, because you're saying that nothing is something. That nothing is some kind of a state, or something that has obtained some time in the past, or something along those lines, which is logically contradictory to saying there's nothing. So, another way of putting this is saying that nothing, that says there's nothing and something comes from nothing. Okay, well, again, what other than this not being a state from which something can come, what would we usually call this? A cause. Is a cause nothing? Nope, we gotta negate cause, and that means this is not a cause. Another thing we would cause this kind of relationship is between a power and an effect. Nope, obviously nothing cannot be a power. It cannot have the power to create something. So again, we have to negate that. So really what we have here is not something coming from nothing in the real sense of nothing being something from which something comes from. We have something coming about for no reason whatsoever. Okay, so another thing to think about is, if we assume there's a beginning of the universe, this is T1, and say we have T2 or T10, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. At the time of T1, is there nothing? No, again, because nothing cannot be in time. So what about before T1? Well, there is no time. There's nothing between. There is no before T1. There's no state. There's nothing that can obtain. There's just nothing. So at every point in time, we have something. So to act as if nothing is not a state that exists now, but it's a state that exists before, is simply an error. At all times, there was something. There was a first time, possibly, but there was still something at that time. So if we were to say that, hey, something could come about from nothing at this point in time, then this for no reason, and to make it more clear, then there's no reason why it couldn't happen at this time. So we would just as well expect that a bunch of things would be popping into existence now just as much as then, since there is no difference between these two times. And he talks about how we can't observe nothing. But yeah, we can say this is us. What we do observe is something, and that every time something comes about, it comes from something. So, as he mentioned, this is perfectly good reason to believe that something does not come from nothing when there's something around, which there's something around at every point in time. So, therefore, it is absolutely impossible for something to come from nothing. Logically, in this sense over here, and physically in the sense that we have observed that the property of something is to come from something that exists. Okay, so let's say that you admit all this and say, okay, well, what we really mean by nothing is something. But still, if there was a case when there was space, just space, and which is clearly not the case now, then this could come from, then this space by itself could cause something to exist. Okay, that is perfectly possible. I don't know. There could be something in the nature of space that gives it the ability to cause something to come from space. I'm not going to deny that. It hasn't been proven, as far as I'm aware. So we're just going to have to say I don't know. However, this has no relevance in the God debate, because I mean, really, the entire idea of God is that we have God down here, and He's sustaining everything that exists. Nothing can exist without God. Now, if that's the case, then space cannot exist without God. So if we have space, then it cannot exist without this necessary being. Space cannot exist without existence itself, which is God. So we're not solving any problems in the atheist debate by pretending like this is nothing and then saying that therefore we don't need God. We're just confusing the issue. In order to argue that things can come about into existence without God, you have to really argue either that things do not metaphysically need God, which means you would have to refute the arguments for the existence of God, or you would have to argue that things happen for no reason, which is obviously unreasonable by definition. Once again, to summarize, nothing is nothing. It is not a state from which something can come, and space is not nothing. Space still would need to be caused by God if the arguments for the existence of God were correct. So you have to actually refute the arguments for the existence of God. End of story.